Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Paul and Dayton as usual. There's not a whole bunch going on in Ottawa other than a bit of losing, but we're a month into that already, so we passed November. Hopefully, it's all up from here. Um, First thing I wanted to get into, now that we are in December, it is season's greetings, and with that comes the World Juniors. And Ottawa is playing host to the World Juniors, so I mean it makes sense for the top prospect to be joining the World Juniors team for Team Canada, with Ottawa playing host. So it's going to be exciting to see him. But wait, Carter Yakemchuk not even invited to selection camp. Now I will say. Not the only big shock there. Just off the top of my head, Michael Hage, Michael Misa, um, TJ Ginla, Zane Parak. There's a lot of guys that were not invited that absolutely should have been. So, Paul, I'll ask you first before we get to Dayton, our prospect expert. What are your thoughts on Yakimchuk not getting invited? Do you have any harsh opinions on that, or is it just kind of sometimes stuff happens and people don't get invited?
This is a shocking, outrageous insult to the people of Ottawa, and there's moves afoot in town to secede from Canada over this move. I'm kidding. I don't want to second guess. There's a lot of, sure, no, people aren't happy, including Steos here in Ottawa. But I'm not going to second guess Team Canada head coach Dave Cameron. He's a smart hockey guy. I know him. I've seen what he's done here with the 67s in previous years. And what they're trying to do, what he and his staff are trying to do, is construct a team that is going to be competitive with what they think will be the teams that they're facing. And it's a short training camp. I think it's 3 days. They haven't got the time to go through a whole slew of prospects and take their time and let people play their way onto the roster. So their scouting reports are complete. They're thorough. I don't know Yakimchuk, certainly not as well as Dayton would, but I've heard the criticism of him. He's not tight defensively. He's an offensive type guy, and I'm assuming that the preference here on the part of Cameron and his staff is to emphasize defense, particularly on the defense, and they feel that they've got enough offense with the players they're going who've been invited. Uh, they've got enough of offense that they need. That would be my take.
Well, and I will say, like the defensemen that they did invite, a lot of them are more than well deserving. Like you look at Matthew Schaefer, he's 100% needs to be on that team, especially after he dominated the CHL versus US game, or games, I should say.
Yeah.
Sam Dickinson's going to be their number one guy. Tanner Mollendike's excellent. Cameron Allen, huge fan of him. Oliver Bonk, Harrison Bernicki, all great options. But there's a few other guys that I'm like, really? Like, you're not even going to invite Zane Parekh or Carter Yakimchuk. And that's where I get a little, like, I'll be honest, I'm like, Caden Price, Andrew Gibson, Sawyer Mineo, and Bo Aki. I don't know them super well. Obviously, they're pretty good defensemen, and they're probably more shutdown guys um, than Yakimchuk is. And I could be completely wrong, but yeah, I just to cut both Yakimchuk and Parekh, you're probably thinking, yeah, listen, we know we have enough offense here. Let's focus on some shutdown guys. So, like I said, I don't know those other defensemen super well, but I would assume that Canada sees a bit more defense in their game than the offense that the other guys bring. Um, like Matthew Schaefer, I mean, he's probably going to be their top offensive option, even though he's not even drafted yet. He's just a draft eligible guy. Dayton, what are your thoughts on um, either Yakimchuk being excluded or why you think it's the right idea? Like, what are your thoughts?
So I think like I've been mulling it over why Canada wouldn't even extend him an invite. And I think it largely just comes down to age. Canada has
Mm.
always tended to go older with their World Junior rosters. They like icing mostly 19-year-olds. And they've done that for years and years and years. Um, and this year, I think they're trying to build a bit more of like a maybe like an all-around squad. They're trying to find guys who can play both ends of the ice, and Yakimchuk definitely has that high-end offensive skill. There's still questions around his defensive skill, right? And he's working on that, and it's getting better. But I wonder if it's maybe not where Team Canada wants it to be. And being that he's just 18, or unless he's just 19 now, right? He's was just recently drafted. They didn't invite a whole bunch of underage defensemen, I guess if you want to say that. Um, so I'm most familiar with the WHL guys. Caden Price, incredible season. He's leading the WHL defenseman in scoring with 31 points in 23 games. Um, like he's a very solid guy and mostly a defensive defenseman and having a crazy offensive year. So he's a fantastic addition. He should be on that team.
Fair enough.
But it's this is a perennial problem for any team, any international team that Canada puts together, right? It's there's such a bevy of talent. It always comes down to, well, who do you leave off? And Canada's probably the one country that could put together two, maybe three teams that would be competitive in any international tournament. So
Yeah.
it's a rich country's problem.
And I think only, I'm just looking at it, two guys. I think only two guys are 18 or younger that they invited for
Uh,
defense,
oh,
right?
for
Matthew Schaefer
defense, Matthew
is,
Schaefer.
is 17
Um,
and Harrison Brunnick is 18.
yes, yeah,
And I think that's it, unless I'm missing somebody.
I th I think so. I don't know when Sawyer Mineo was drafted. Um,
He's a 19-year-old. He was drafted in
he's
2023.
19.
He is having another good season, and he is a little bit more of that snarl that you might want, that Yakimchuk could bring, but they're getting that in Sawyer Mineo. And he's also got 17 points in 15 games playing on a very tough Thunderbirds team, not a super skilled one. So he's actually one of the best players on that team right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like their defensive selections, I think, are really good. Maybe Brunnick sticks out as a surprising one, but that guy's super mobile, and he missed most of last season with an injury. You put him with someone like Tanner Mollendijk, another super mobile defenseman, that would be a very dangerous pair. Because yes, Brunnick is a right shot. Maybe that's what he got. Like the more I think you dive into Canada's invites, it's a lot tougher to justify taking Yakimchuk over some of the guys they invited because everyone is so deserving. Just like Paul said, Canada could ice two, maybe three teams, and they all would be competitive. So it's kind of deciding what you want from your team. Canada seems to be prioritizing age and experience, which then pushes 18-year-olds like Perek and Yakimchuk down the depth chart. He'll be on the team next year, though, almost definitely.
Well, I think Cameron's looking at probably Team USA and saying, "What do I have to construct to beat these guys?" That's what he's doing.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
I'm really excited. Like these forwards are like obviously I'm super excited to see Porter Martone and Gavin McKenna play. They're Gavin McKenna is having a ridiculously good year. I don't I'm wondering why Andrew Crystal isn't on this team. Oh, he is. Okay.
Yep.
I was looking at the list and I was like, hold on. Why am I not seeing him? No, he is. But Andrew Crystal, he's going to be an incredible player for Washington and seeing him in this World Junior Selection camp and going into the tournament. It's going to be super fun. Obviously, you got Matthew Wood, Braden Yeager, Bradley Nadeau. It's just unreal how much talent they have up front. So going a bit more defensive and shying away from completely one-dimensional players like Yakimchuk or Perek, I get it. They're gonna have enough offense up front.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. You want to be maybe a little bit more conservative on the defensive end, and that's not something that you'd ever describe Yakimchuk with. He's not a conservative player.
Yeah,
He's aggressive. He's in your face. He will throw a giant hit. He will fight you. He will score incredible highlight reel goals. He doesn't sit back, and that's going to make him a great NHL player one day. It's not going to. I think that could be viewed as a liability for a World Junior team with a really quick turnaround. So
Though
maybe that's another reason.
I would have really liked to see him be given that role, given that
Yeah.
shutdown guy role. Like show us your defensive efforts. And obviously, the World Junior selection camp isn't going to cater to what I want to see. But I don't know. I'd really like to see him in that role because I think he's capable of it. It's just his brain goes right to because with the hitman, he kind of has to be in a offensive force and drive all the
Yeah.
plays and score a bunch of goals. It's his job. So I'd like to see how he could handle being put in a different position.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention here is the Hitmen are a team to keep an eye on this year. It's not just for Yakimchuk. Like, of course, watch Yakimchuk. He's been my prospect of the week twice already, and he will be again. I'm almost certain. Um, but they've been making some big trades. Like they just added Regina Pat's captain, Tanner Howe, who I thought was invited to.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't I find him on this list? That's annoying. Whatever. Yeah, so they just added him, and I think he had a 3 goal. I think he just had a hat trick in one of his games, and he's only been there for a few.
Yeah.
They're going to be a team to push for a title this year. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It'll be
gonna.
fun to
I think
watch.
it's gonna help develop Yakimchuk's all-around ability too, because they won't have to rely on him for that as much.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good year. It's gonna work really well. The World Junior snub is a little bit painful. I think he should have gotten at least an invite, but I can see why they maybe didn't.
So do you know the only Ottawa Senators prospect that has been invited to a selection camp?
I do, I think.
Vladimir Nikitin for
Yes.
Kazakhstan. So is Nikitin going to challenge for a medal? Absolutely not. He's probably going to make the team. He's playing in the MHL, so the Russian Junior League or uh, AHL equivalent, I guess. Um, and he's got an 884 save percentage, a 4.80 record. He's not playing on a very good team with Astana. So does that go anywhere? I don't know. Certainly going to make the team. Kazakhstan isn't pumping out the goalies. Um, but yeah, if he has a nice showing, that'll be good. He's not going to get a medal. Don't expect too much. So Ottawa is very likely to go without World Junior representation in the on the podium yet again. Frustrating to see, as we are in year 8 of the rebuild and have no players going to the World Juniors to challenge for a medal. But what can you do about it? Um, Other than draft some good players.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this for the tickets to the Kazaki games, they're $15, very affordable. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
no, my son and I are going to a pre-tournament game, Sweden and Canada. Those tickets are a couple of $100, and that's
yeah.
a TE place. And then if you want to get into the secondary market for Canadian games, I hear they're going for around $800 a ticket. So
That's insane.
yeah.
They weren't that bad for the pre-tournament games when they were here in Halifax. They were bad and they got really expensive as they started to do good in the tournament, but they certainly weren't that bad.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so if you're looking
Um,
for a cheap game, Nikitin would be a great player to watch. He's going to be almost certainly the starter for Kazakhstan.
yeah,
Um,
and
and
he's
I
gonna
think,
face lots of shots.
yeah, I he did very good in the Division 1A last year.
Yeah.
Had a 944 save percentage in 5 games.
He's the reason that they're playing in the tournament this year.
A very large part of it. Yeah. So I could see them stealing a win or two, and maybe avoiding relegation if he finds his rhythm. Because he can be a very good goalie. I think he just struggles with consistency.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, most Senators fans will have their eye on him, see how things go. And well, probably Porter Martone at this point. Ottawa currently sits 29th in the league. So here's here, here's a glimpse of the future. Hopefully not.
Can't believe we're still talking about that.
I know, isn't that ridiculous? Like
Uh,
Martone's supposed to go. I mean, at this point, top four is kind of up in the air with everybody. So if you're not happy with Martone, you can go look at Matthew Schaefer, or maybe we'll just start watching for Gavin McKenna for 2026. Hasn't been good in Ottawa.
No.
All right. Some actual like huge news off the ice in Ottawa. Dany Heatley is coming back. Something that I didn't think I would ever say. And I was too young to really enjoy the pizza line days. So for those of you that don't know what the pizza line is, Dany Heatley, Jason Spezza, and Daniel Alfredson made up a line, and the Ottawa Senators did something that was pretty similar to what they do with Gabriel Pizza right now. And if they would score, I believe it was four or more goals in a game, you would get a certain amount off pizzas, or it would be a certain price, and it was super cheap. And the team actually had to stop doing it because that top line scored so many goals in that 4 year span. Dany Heatley scored 50 goals twice, not just in '07. And I mean, Jason Spezza and Daniel Alfredson were in the prime of their careers, just having unreal seasons. So it was like one of the best lines in hockey at that time. And so the pizza line is returning to Ottawa on Thursday. They are going to be playing the Detroit Red Wings, and there's going to be a ceremonial puck drop, and Dany Heatley, Jason Spezza, and Daniel Alfredson are going to be dropping the puck. Obviously, we know that Alfredson is part of the team. Spezza has his own gig with the Penguins, and Dany Heatley's scouting. I don't know who he's scouting with. Um, Part of me wants to say the Blues.
Yeah.
Let's look it up.
But anyway, like it'll be really exciting to see. I mean, Heatley back in Ottawa. He's with the Flyers. He's
Yeah.
a pro scout. Um, yeah, and so there was a question. I believe it was Ian Mendez was speaking with him, and he said. He showed him the picture, the iconic picture of the three of them standing, listening to O Canada, lined up beside each other. And he said, "Have you ever like, do you think about this picture often?" And he said, "I think about it every day. I have it hung up in my office."
Hmm.
So Ottawa still has a nice place in his heart. So I have a question for you two. Does he still have a nice place in your heart after the departure from Ottawa? We'll start with you, Paul.
Well, before I get into that, I have to say it's this whole thing, the reunification of the pizza line. It's a bit sad, really. It kind of reminds me of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization when periodically they get together the surviving members of the 1967 Stanley Cup champion team and bring out the bagpipes in Toronto and celebrate that. But hey, you know what? Ottawa, Leafs have been what, 57 years since that great victory. Our last Stanley Cup was 97 years ago. So I'd say Ottawa is fully entitled to get aging veterans back together and celebrate past glories. We deserve it here in Ottawa. But no, I think that's forgotten. A lot of fans don't even remember those days or what the pizza line was. I know he left town. It was quite controversial, right? He asked for a trade, and then they had a trade lined up for him in Edmonton, and I guess he nixed that, invoked his no trade clause, and much to the annoyance of Ottawa's fans. Uh, had he gone to Edmonton, Ottawa would have had Dustin Penner, which he was a good player back in the day. Turns out we ended up though with Milan Mikhailuk when he went to San Jose. He stayed here 6 years, and Jonathan Chuchu, who bit of trivia, I guess he spent 1 year here and never laced up in the NHL again. So I don't know what that says about Ottawa, but no, I think he'll be warmly welcomed back. Someone was speculating about Chris Neal's reaction because Neal, when Heatley would come back, Neal made a point of like leveling him a couple times, and I heard Neal talk in an interview, and he said, "No, I'm just doing my job. He's a member of the opposing team, and that's what they paid me to do back in the day." And to, put emphasis on the point, he said, "Look, um, uh, what's his name? Fisher, Mike Fisher." He said, "Mike Fisher and I were besties, and Mike came back and I leveled him too. It's just what I did." So No, I don't think there'll be hard feelings.
Yeah, that's that's fair. I mean, it was Chris Neal's job. Like you can't judge him laying out a guy,
Yeah.
based on whether he likes him or not, because then you think that he doesn't have any friends. Um, he's probably even ran into his own teammates and laughed at them.
I think he'd hit his mother,
Pretty well.
if she is wearing the opposing sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Dayton, do you have any thoughts on the reunition? Is
The
that a word?
reunition. Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a word. Um,
It's not. That's okay.
on the pizza line coming back to Ottawa.
I think it's great. It's one of the reasons I started cheering for the Senators way back when. Um, so it like I remember the criticism that they would only play that line pretty much. Maybe a little bit before that too, when they had Havlat. Um, like they only had one, maybe two lines, and so they put those guys out all the time, and so it's no no surprise that they got 50 goals multiple seasons for Heatley. They were great though. Like that was such a strong unit, and like those were the best years of Heatley's career was when he was in Ottawa. And I know that there's some hard feelings maybe when he left, but I think there was a time where everyone left Ottawa with hard feelings because they had a lot of voices, we'll say, in the management and offices, and it was tough to get along. And I think that kind of created a negative culture around the team. And a lot of players, I think, took that personally. I think it's connected to why Eric Carlson needed to leave and why Mike Hoffman needed to leave. And I know Hoffman had other stuff there too. But
I can't
yeah,
think of a single example of players wanting to or players leaving on a bad term.
everyone in Ottawa did. Well,
Alexi Yashin,
yeah.
Dany Heatley, Mike Fisher, Daniel Alfredson, Eric Carlson, Mark Stone. Should I go on? And
I
this was
think
all under
yeah,
one regime.
Well,
like,
it was chaos back then. After Murray left, they went through a quick succession of three coaches, right?
Yeah.
John Paddock, Craig Hartsburg, Corey Clouston. Rumor had it that he never got along with Clouston. And I think the next year, what they went to the final in '07 and then '08, '09 season, they didn't even make the playoffs. So, yeah, I could see why Heatley and others would have been very unhappy. And well,
and I don't
So
think it's a surprise to see all of these, stars and like the heroes of the franchise come back now because you have a brand new ownership group. You have you have a former NHL player running the team, right? Um, and then you have Michael Andlauer basically saying everything right and putting his money where his mouth is. They're doing everything that most professional organizations do, and they honor their alumni. And I think that's why you're seeing so many of them come back now. Alfredson was one of the first to come back, and he wouldn't talk to the franchise for years. Guys are following suit. I think that's a really positive example. I think that just shows where the Senators are right now. And yeah, on the ice, it sucks, but at least there's areas that are improving.
my
well,
last,
go ahead.
Paul.
No, I was just going to say if Davy Keon can come back into the fold in Toronto,
Yeah.
then I'd say Dany Heatley can come back into the fold here.
So, last question on that. What percent of the fans are gonna boo in the arena? Paul,
10%,
you think
but
10?
I don't know.
Dayton,
Bunch of
what do you think? Do you think it's gonna be higher than that?
I would say lower. Like, who still holds a grudge against Heatley? He's the highest goal scoring player in franchise history.
Yeah,
I would hold a grudge against the old ownership.
fair enough. I also think it'll be like, I don't know, there's gonna be a couple old heads that are gonna do that, but I don't know. All right. Well, actually, my last thought on that is I am upset that this is happening against the Detroit Red Wings, where Daniel Alfredsson went. Just give me like Seattle or something, where where there's no storyline connected to this at all. All right. We'll move on to what we're gonna wrap up with is the quarterway season award. So I only came up with a couple. Like we could go through like the actual NHL awards, say the Vezina, the Norris, whatnot. There's not a whole bunch of there's not a whole bunch of options for that. Like I don't know. It gets boring when you just do that with one team. So I just made up a couple here. And if you guys have any more you wanted to ask or throw out there, you're more than welcome to. So question one: who's the MVP of the Ottawa Senators, Dayton?
My MVP is Tim Stützle. He is performing exactly like everyone wanted him to. He's got 30, he leads the team in scoring with 30 points. He's already got 10 goals. That is a player that is driving that offense. He's my MVP.
Hey, Dayton or Paul, sorry.
I can answer again, I
Yeah,
guess.
go again. Give me another answer.
Uh,
Well, you know what? Tim Stützle. I mean, what other choice is there? He's the heart and soul of this team this year. There's games when I think he's the only guy that cares about what happens. He's on track for over 100 points. So yeah, he'd have to be your MVP.
Fair enough. I can't disagree at all. There's only one real answer for that. Most surprising. There's really only one answer for this too, I think. But Paul, go ahead.
Well, it would be Adam Gaudette, and that's most surprising, but not really. He's on track for over 40 goals. That shouldn't be surprising. He led the AHL a few years ago, and what I got a chuckle at was he got asked by reporters in Ottawa, are you
Yeah.
surprised? And he was annoyed and just shot back. I'm going to quote him. You guys keep asking me if I'm surprised, and I don't mean to be sound cocky, but I'm not. I was able to do this at every level, high school, college, every step of the way. It took time, but I managed to do it. It's only a matter of time before I'm able to do it at this level. So
Yeah, I loved that quote. That was great.
yeah.
Dayton is Adam Gaudette's your answer as well.
oh, 100%. Like he's got 12 goals already. He's one goal behind Brady Tkachuk
Yeah.
for leading the team. That's crazy. And sure, he's only got 13 points, one of them, one assist. But like he's never done this at the NHL level. He's already hit his career high in goals, which he set back in 1920 with the Canucks. Everything is clicking for him, and he should be as confident as he is because that's why he's scoring those goals. Like he's not taking the ho hum. Things are just going right for me. It's like, yeah, he has done this at every level. He has been a fantastic goal scorer, and now in Ottawa, he can be that goal scorer again. Awesome. Just no one saw it coming, so that's awesome. That's the best.
Yeah, such an easy answer on that one. So who's been the most disappointing, Dayton? There's quite a few candidates for this one. Like you could look at Linus Ullmark not quite living up to what people hoped. David Perron, who's pointless, albeit there's some other stuff going on there. Nick Cousins hasn't done a whole bunch of anything. Jake Sanderson fell off a cliff. Shall I go on?
Well,
What's your answer, Dayton?
for me it's Perron because he was brought in to be a stabilizing factor in the middle six. He was supposed to add a little bit of grit, some of that playmaking ability that he showcased in Detroit last season. And he has basically just been injured the whole time. He hasn't been what he needed to be. He was supposed to be a 40, 50 point guy, and that's not happening this year. And that's a lot of money to spend on somebody who is injured, especially when you needed that stabilizing force in the middle six. I wonder if things would have been a little bit different with the team, but that was that's a really tough blow for a Senators team who needed some leadership. And yeah, that's really disappointing.
Yeah. Paul, who's been the most disappointing for you?
Well, I agree with your two picks. I'm not going to beat Allmark a dead horse to death. Numbers speak for themselves. Terrible. But to Dayton's point, I mean, I'm just going to put down, well, before I go there, Michael Amadio has to be on the list of disappointments. He's got 4 points, makes 2.6 million bucks. But, that's symptomatic. If you ask me most disappointing, I'd have to say the whole team. I mean, they're 10, 12, and 2, and they've got 22 points, and they're at the NHL cap, essentially. The whole squad's a disappointment this year.
All right. And so who's your re-sign candidate? And I'm gonna take Adam Gaudette out of this. Can't pick Gaudette because that's obvious. Everybody would give him well, Dorian would have given him an 8x8 by now. So Paul, I'll start with you on this one. Who on this roster would you be willing to bring back? That's on a 1 year deal
It's on a 1 year deal.
or expiring deal.
Would that include RFAs?
Yep.
Yeah. So on that one, wouldn't have been that long ago that I would have said Tyler Kleven. Um, Disappointment setting in there. Maybe it's because, he is a rookie after all. It's to be expected. But I'd probably say Ridley Gregg. I want him re-signed.
Yeah. Ridley Gregg has been so disappointing. I forgot to answer. Ridley Gregg was my most disappointing player
Yeah.
this season. He's done nothing. I was really hoping he would emerge as like a really strong third line center. Not even close right now. I'm surprised he hasn't been healthy scratched, to be honest. Very disappointed in Gregg. Dayton, what's your answer for re-sign candidate? Who's kind of number one on your list to bring back?
Ooh, there's a couple. If he wants to, Claude Giroux. Uh, I know he's getting up there and has maybe thought about calling it quits after this contract. But if he wants to come back on maybe a bit more of a team-friendly deal, that would be amazing for the Senators. He is a great uh, leader and a top line player still. Maybe more of a second line, third line guy at this point of his career, but he's been he's basically come as advertised, right? When he signed in Florida, not Florida, Ottawa. When he signed in Ottawa a couple of years back, right? Runner up, I think would be, you know what? I'm going to go off on a limb here. Cole Reinhardt. He needs another contract. He's been fantastic this year. I've loved following his journey in the AHL. Like he's leading, I think he's leading the Belleville Senators in points, isn't he?
I'm not sure.
Or maybe points per game. He's got 14 points in 11 games, which puts him second behind Garrett Pilon. Pilon?
Pilon.
Pilon. Yeah, not a pylon. He's a pilon. Um, sorry. Yeah, those would be my two guys. Would be Claude Giroux if he wants to. If not, make sure Cole Reinhardt gets back on this team because he's grown so much this year. He deserves a shot, and I bet he would make the bottom six a little bit stronger if he was on it.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. Pilon leads the way with 15 points, but Reinhardt is 1 point behind with less games played. So,
But the fact we're struggling to identify contract extensions and Claude Giroux, what is he, a 36-year-old veteran comes up. I think that speaks to just how poorly the bottom six has performed this year. There's just no goals coming out of them. And that was the same problem that Ottawa had last year. You know?
I strongly disagree. Adam Gaudette was in the bottom six until like 3 games ago. And I know he's just one guy. And Shane Pinto only has one goal, another disappointing player. Ridley Gregg, I believe, only has one goal. Um,
Okay, but take Gaudette out and
right.
then tell me what you've got in the bottom six.
I thought Gregor's been all right. Like he's been a solid addition. I'd
Eh,
consider bringing him back.
I'd bring him back as like a 13th forward, but um, I don't know.
Would not for anything more than $1 million, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So,
No.
last question before we wrap things up. What would both of you give what's your maximum contract for Adam Gaudette right now for an extension?
Maximum?
Yeah, like
Uh,
what's the highest you're going?
175.
Okay,
Maybe
Paul?
maybe 2 million. I'll go 2 million for max.
I'm looking at him. If he's on track, could be if he turns out to be a 40 goal scorer. uh, You know, I'm thinking three and a half.
Yeah, that's fair. A 40 goal scorer for 3 million. It's insane to talk about it like that, but no, I wouldn't give him any more than that either. I would probably it's really tough because that $3 million could come bite you if he goes back to a 7 goal guy. Um, I would do a 1 year deal. I would do a 1 year deal at like 3.5 million. That would be my max. But with any amount of term on it, it would be 2 million would be my cap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd go like a 2 by 3. Because he's only 28, right? Sign
Yeah.
him to 31. If he can keep his production up, that's an amazingly valued deal. But he just doesn't have the history. And he's been in the league for a while. So it's more of a, okay, this is a show me.
Yeah.
Score 40 again, right? And then
And,
sure, we'll sign you to 4 million bucks.
yeah. And you know what, Matthew and I were talking yesterday on the actual the Hockey Writers Roundtable podcast. And we were saying like 28's not that actually I think this was after we finished recording, but 28's not that old. Like some players are just really starting to come into their own at this age. Some don't really make it until 26. And he's been around for a long time, like you said, Dayton. So it's not unrealistic to see him establish himself as a goal scoring middle six winger. Like I don't think anybody would really call him a top line winger, even though he's playing on the top line. Um, but I don't know. I think he could just be establishing himself as a full-time NHL player now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. Appreciate you being here as always. And for everybody that's watching, appreciate you being here as always. And we will see you next week on the Hockey Writers Roundtable.